gonna try something a little different for today's review, mainly because up until about an hour and a half ago, I didn't really have anything that I wanted to talk about. But then I watched something very interesting on Crunchyroll. Hey guys, KiraKennedy here with day 4 in my vlog Every Day in August challenge. And a lot of you may remember that I'm a huge fan of anime. In fact, half of my username, Kira, came from the alias of the main character from the anime Death Note. In fact, I'm such a huge fan of this show, this anime, that it was actually in the running for what I was going to do for Team 4 Star's Tenkaichi Iron Man Budokai Abridge-a-thon. Of course, Cowboy Bebop wound up winning out, but Death Note was a very, very close second to what I was going to do. Instead, had Cowboy Bebop not pulled through the way it did. But for those of you who do not, or who have never heard of this show, or who have never watched it, Death Note basically follows a Japanese high school student by the name of Light Yagami, who picks up a mysterious notebook that can kill any person whose name he writes in it, so long as he knows their real name and their face. And unless he specifies more details, the person's simply going to die of a heart attack 40 seconds after he writes their name down. Now basically this turns into a giant mystery, not so much who did it, because we know who did it, but you've got this super cop named L, who's trying to find out who Kira is. Well, Kira tries to find out who L is so he can kill L and preserve his identity. And that's basically the majority of this series. You've got Light killing people and also trying to preserve his identity. Now, I mentioned earlier about Crunchyroll, and for those of you who don't know what that is, Crunchyroll is basically like Netflix, but specifically for anime and Japanese live-action dramas. Which is where the subject of today's vlog comes up, because I actually sat down and watched the first episode, because it was something I kept in my Crunchyroll queue for a while, and I figured, why not actually sit down and watch it today? And I've got to say, there's a lot of differences from the original source material, but in a way, it's so different from the source that I actually want to continue to watch it. Now, I will preface this by saying the basic concept is still the same. Like, Yagami, a Japanese student, finds the Death Note, uses it to test it out on two people, a convict who has hostages, and someone riding a motorcycle. The order of these are slightly different from the anime. Okay, they're extremely different from the anime. In the anime, he starts out with an escaped convict who's holding up a kindergarten. He writes his name down in the notebook, and he dies of a heart attack. And then the second test is on a random thug in the street who he writes his name and he dies in a traffic accident. In a live-action show, spoilers, his first victim is the guy who dies in a traffic accident, but he's actually killed by a heart attack. And the first victim is also someone who bullies a friend of his and always asks him for money. Whereas the second victim is a former criminal that his father, Soichiro Yagami, who happens to be chief of police for the town they live in. I don't remember where it is. I just know it's somewhere in the Kanto region of Japan. But this escaped convict, he holds up. He takes a mother and her daughter as a hostage, and Light's father offers to become a hostage in exchange for letting the little girl go. And Light, watching the news, writes down the criminal's name in the notebook, causing him to die of a heart attack. So, there's still the premise of he tests it on two people, a hostage taker and someone riding a bike. But the order and the actual way it plays out is very different. And also, a lot of the characterization is very different here. Light starts out a lot more happy-go-lucky, basically more of a normal teenager. I guess it's a way to make him more likable to the audience, more likable, more relatable. In fact, it's also revealed that the day Light's father originally arrested that convict that was Light's second victim was also the day that his mother died. So it's revealed that Light not only works a job, but he also is in charge of cleaning and cooking it at home. In terms of characterization with other characters, some people are kind of similar from what I've seen so far. For example, Misa Amane, a Japanese pop idol. Light's father, Soichiro Yagami. Watari, who's basically a butler for the super detective L. L himself is, from what I've seen, very similar to his anime counterpart, as well as Ryuk, although from what I've seen, he seems to dial up the douche meter to about a 9.9, as opposed to Ryuk in the anime, he's just kind of there because he's bored and he finds it slightly entertaining. Whereas, like I said about Ryuk in the show, the live-action Ryuk is a lot more of a douchebag. But basically, this episode, which runtime was about an hour and 10 minutes, somewhere about that point, it basically follows the plot of the first few episodes condensed in. So Light finds a notebook, he tests it out on the first two victims, then it cuts to about a month later after he meets Ryuk. And then he meets Ryuk after contemplating ending his life because he'd taken the lives of two people, whether or not they were the scum of the earth. Which is when he meets Ryuk, and Ryuk convinces him that he could use the notebook for anything he wanted. So after that, it cuts to a month later, and he's killed about 52 people. So in the span of an hour, we get basically the plot of the first 4 or 5 episodes, which includes the introduction of L, where he also reveals his face a lot sooner than he does in the anime, as well as the famous scene where Kira kills a convict posing as L during a live broadcast, which was only broadcast live in the region he lived in, the Kanto region in Japan. And then it just ends with Light's father, Soichiro, meeting L for the first time. But in addition to all of that, there are 2 characters that are introduced, 3 characters technically, that are introduced very early from the point they were introduced in the anime. The first, of course, was Misa Amane, or as a lot of people call her, Misa, who is, again, a Japanese pop idol whose parents were killed by someone who broke into her house when she was very young. The second was introduced about the same time we find out about Misa's past. He's a lawyer by the name of Teru Mikami, who in the anime isn't introduced until I think the last 10 episodes of the series, and in the anime, Mikami is essentially becomes Light's apprentice. He basically takes up the mantle of Kira while Light is trying to preserve his identity, because at this point, spoilers, he actually joins the police force. And then the final character who's introduced that really shouldn't be introduced at this point is Nier. And basically who Nier is about halfway through the anime, and I'm gonna put a little time code here so you can skip ahead because there are spoilers. But essentially, L dies, and Nier is chosen as his replacement, along with another person, but he may or may not be introduced in this series, so I won't mention his name yet. But basically, right before the episode ends, they introduce him, and I don't really know what his role is going to be in the series yet, but if they're introducing him and he's closely following how Elle and Kira are going to do battle, I think his role is going to be very similar to how it was in the anime. I'm going to keep showing that, just to show that you actually own the entire series. But, in terms of my overall thoughts, like I said earlier, it's different from how the anime and even the live-action movies, Death Note, The Last Name, and Elle Change the World, it's definitely different from how those portray the characters, but it's done in a way that I kind of want to continue seeing it. I want to see how different it is, or what directions they go in, whether or not it's going to be more faithful to the manga than the movies were, and whatnot. And I think it's something that fans of the original anime might want to check out if they have a Crunchyroll account. So, before I actually go into my my plugs and whatnot, do you guys want to see me do more reviews like this? If so, let me know in the comments below. But if you guys would like to follow me on social media, I am on Twitter at KiraKennedyHNR, Tumblr at KiraKennedyHNR.tumblr.com, and of course you can always check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/KiraKennedyReviews. And as always, if you'd like to check out any of my past work, my Let's Plays, my stream archives, even my reviews, you can do so at peanutbutterdisaster.com. So until tomorrow, I'm Kira Kennedy, and thank you for watching.
Peanut butter disaster.